The council chamber floated in the emptiness of space, a massive structure built from materials that shimmered like captured starlight. Inside, representatives from 17 different alien species gathered in a circle. They had ruled the galaxy for 3,000 years, and in all that time, they had never known true fear. Today, that changed. Velshara stood at the center of the chamber. She was tall and thin, with blue skin that seemed to glow in the dim light. Her species, the Therians, had always been the peacekeepers of the council. But now, even her calm voice shook as she spoke. "The Devourers have taken 12 of our worlds in 3 weeks," she said. The words hung in the air like poison. "Our weapons do not work. Our shields fail. Every strategy we try, they adapt to within hours. We are losing this war." Around the circle, the other species shifted nervously. Some had scales, others had fur or smooth skin like polished stone. But all of them shared the same expression: terror. "What do you propose?" asked Krenek, a massive creature covered in thick armor plating. His species had never lost a battle in 2,000 years. Until now, Velshara took a deep breath. "There is one species we have not contacted. One we placed under quarantine because we deemed them too dangerous." The chamber erupted in angry voices. Everyone knew which species she meant. "The humans?" "You cannot be serious," shouted one representative. "They are savages." "Violent and unpredictable," said another. Velshara raised her hand for silence. "Yes, they're violent. Yes, they are unpredictable. That is exactly why we need them. The Devourers adapt to logic and pattern. Perhaps they cannot adapt to chaos." The debate lasted for hours. But in the end, survival won over pride. The vote was close, but it passed. 3 days later, 5 ships entered Earth's solar system. The humans had been watching them for years. Ever since the Council had discovered Earth, they had placed invisible satellites around the planet to monitor the strange species that somehow invented nuclear weapons before they achieved world peace. The Council found this terrifying. Most species achieve peace first, then slowly develop technology. Humans had done it backward. When the Council ships appeared in Earth's sky, every nation on the planet went on high alert. Missiles were armed. Fighter jets scrambled. For a brief moment, it looked like the humans might attack the very people who had come to ask for help. Then the Council sent their message. It was broadcast on every frequency, translated into every human language. The message was simple and terrible. An enemy is coming that will destroy us all. We are here to ask for your help. If you refuse, they will come for your world next. You will die alone. If you fight with us, perhaps we all survive. The choice is yours." The world leaders gathered for an emergency meeting. The United Nations building in New York City had never seen so many presidents, prime ministers, and kings in one place. They argued and shouted and accused each other of past crimes. This was normal for humanity. Then something remarkable happened. A general from China stood up and spoke. "For 10,000 years, we have fought each other. We have drawn borders and built walls. We have killed each other over resources and beliefs and pride. But today, there is no border that matters. Today, we are not Chinese or American or Russian or African. Today, we are human, and we will not go quietly into the darkness." One by one, the other leaders nodded. Old enemies shook hands. Ancient grudges were set aside. In 72 hours, something that had never existed before came into being: the Terran Defense Coalition. Every nation, every military, every resource, united. The Council delegation watched from orbit, stunned. They had expected panic. They had expected chaos. They had expected the humans to beg them for protection. Instead, the humans prepared for war. Admiral Marcus Chun was chosen to lead the combined forces. He was 53 years old, with gray hair and eyes that had seen too many conflicts. He had fought in 3 wars on Earth before the aliens arrived. Now he would fight in a war among the stars. When Chen met Velshara for the first time, she towered over him. Most council species were larger than humans, but Chun did not seem intimidated. He simply extended his hand. "I am told you shake hands as a greeting," Velshara said, taking his hand carefully. Her fingers were long and delicate. Chen's grip was firm but gentle. "We do," Chun said. "It is an old gesture. It shows we hold no weapons. It is a sign of trust." "Trust," Velshara repeated the word slowly. "Your species fights each other constantly. Why should we trust you?" Chun smiled, but it was a sad smile. "Because we know what it means to fight for survival. Every nation on Earth has faced extinction at some point. We know what desperation feels like. We know what it means to fight when there is no hope left. And that makes us very, very dangerous to our enemies." The combined fleet gathered at the edge of Earth's solar system. Human ships were crude compared to council vessels. They were built from steel and titanium instead of smart materials. Their weapons were kinetic instead of energy-based. Their hulls were thick and ugly instead of sleek and beautiful. But there were so many of them done in 72 hours. Humanity had converted half their orbital industry to military production. Shipyards that once built satellites now built warships. Factories that made cars now made weapons. 8 billion humans worked day and night to build a fleet. The council officers were amazed and horrified in equal measure. This level of mobilization should have taken months. The humans did it in 3 days. As the fleet prepared to jump to Kadasha Prime, where the Devourers were attacking, Admiral Chun stood on the bridge of his flagship. It was called the Indomitable, a name that meant impossible to defeat. Around him, his crew worked at their stations. Humans mixed with Therians and other council species, all working together. Chun activated the ship-wide communication system. His voice would be heard on every vessel in the fleet, human and alien alike. "I know many of you are afraid," he said. "That is good. Fear keeps you alert. Fear keeps you alive. But do not let fear control you. We are going into battle against an enemy that has never been stopped. An enemy that adapts to everything. An enemy that has destroyed worlds." He paused, letting his words sink in. "But they have never fought humans before. They have never fought a species that looks at impossible odds and says, 'Watch me.' They have never fought a species that turns fear into fuel. They think we are monsters? Good. Let us show them what monsters can do when they fight for something worth saving. Let us show them that humanity does not go quietly. Let us show them why Earth named one of our virtues hope and made it the last thing to die." The fleet jumped to hyperspace. Thousands of ships, carrying millions of warriors from across the galaxy. But it was the human ships that carried something the Council had forgotten in 3,000 years of peace. The willingness to do whatever it took to win. The war had begun, and the galaxy would never be the same. Kadasha Prime burned. From orbit, Captain Sarah Okonkwo could see the cities below glowing orange and red as the Devourers tore through the planet's defenses. The Council fleet had arrived too late to prevent the invasion, but perhaps not too late to save some of the population. Sarah had been a pilot in the Nigerian Air Force before the aliens came. Now she commanded a squadron of 12 frigates, each one barely the size of a Council destroyer, but fast and packed with weapons. Her crew called themselves the Wildcards because they never followed the approved tactics. Manual: Council Command is ordering us to hold position and wait for the main battle. Group: her communications officer said. He was young, barely 22, and this was his first real battle. Sarah looked at the tactical display. The Devourers had 3 hive ships surrounding the planet. Each hive ship was the size of a small moon, covered in organic armor and bristling with weapons. The Council battle doctrine said you needed at least 5 capital ships to engage 1 hive ship. Sarah had 12 frigates. "Tell Council Command that we did not hear their order clearly," Sarah said with a slight smile. "Tell them we are experiencing communication problems." Her second command, a Therian named Kalthos, looked at her with wide eyes. He was young for his species, only 30 years old. His blue skin paled slightly. "Captain, that is a direct violation of orders. You could be court-martialed." "Then they can court-martial me after we save those people," Sarah said. She opened the squadron channel. "All ships, this is Wild Card Leader. We are going in. Attack pattern Chaos 7. "Chaos 7 is not an approved pattern," Kelthos protested. "I know," Sarah said. "I made it up last week." The 12 frigates broke formation and dove toward the nearest hive ship. The council officers watching from the command carrier were horrified. This was suicide. This was madness. This was not how warfare was conducted. But the Devourers had never seen anything like it either. Sarah's ships did not attack in neat formation. They scattered like birds startled by a predator, each ship flying in random patterns. The Devourers tried to track them, but human pilots were doing something the AI-controlled Devourer weapons could not predict. They were improvising. One frigate rolled completely inverted and fired all its missiles while flying backward. Another spun in a tight spiral while launching kinetic rounds from its railings. Sarah's own ship flew straight at the hive ship, then at the last second dove underneath it and fired directly into what looked like an organic exhaust port. The Devourers adapted quickly. Their weapons began hitting more targets. 2 frigates exploded in balls of fire. But in those precious moments of chaos, Sarah had accomplished something important. She had gotten the hive ship's attention. "All ships, execute Madman Protocol," Sarah ordered. "Captain, that protocol does not exist in any," Kalthos began. "I know. Do it anyway." What happened next would be studied by military historians for generations. The human ships, damaged and running low on ammunition, turned themselves into weapons. Each frigate had a main reactor that, if overloaded, would explode with tremendous force. The Council species viewed this as a design flaw. Humans viewed it as an opportunity. 3 frigates with critical damage set their reactors to overload and aimed themselves at the hive ship. Their crews evacuated in escape pods while the ships, now flying on autopilot, accelerated to maximum speed. The Devourers tried to destroy them, but the ships were small and fast and already dying. When the 3 frigates hit the hive ship at near-light speed, the explosion was visible from the planet's surface. The hive ship's organic armor cracked. Its weapons went offline. It began to drift, crippled but not destroyed. Sarah had lost half her squadron in 10 minutes. But she had proven something crucial. The Devourers could be hurt. The main council fleet arrived minutes later. Admiral Chun watched the tactical recordings and immediately understood what Sarah had done. While the council admirals argued about disciplinary action, Chun promoted her to wing commander on the spot. "That was reckless," Volshara said to Chun as they watched the battle unfold. "That was brilliant," Chun replied. "Your species has fought wars with perfect mathematics for 3,000 years. You have forgotten that warfare is not about perfect calculations. It is about will. It is about making the enemy more afraid of you than you are of them." On the planet's surface, the real test of human warfare was beginning. The Devourers had landed ground forces, massive creatures that were part machine, part organic matter, designed to consume and convert all biological material. They were virtually unstoppable. Then they met human marines. Sergeant James Volkov led a platoon of 40 soldiers through the ruins of a Kadasha city. His orders were simple: evacuate civilians and delay the Devourers until the main evacuation ships could land. The council officers expected the humans to establish defensive positions and hold them as long as possible. Volkov had other ideas. "Listen up," he told his platoon. "The council fights defensive battles. They dig in and wait for support. That is not how we do things. We are going hunting." The Marines split into small teams and disappeared into the rubble. They did not wait for the Devourers to come to them. They went looking for them. When they found Devourer scout units, they did not engage in prolonged firefights. They hit hard and fast, then vanished before the enemy could respond. Volkov's team discovered something interesting. The Devourers were controlled by a collective intelligence. They shared information instantly. This made them adapt quickly to tactics. But it also meant they all reacted the same way to the same threat. "They think like a computer," Volkov said to his second-in-command. "Computers are predictable once you know their programming. We just need to teach them the wrong lessons." The humans began using guerrilla tactics that made no logical sense. They would attack from one direction. Then, when the Devourers adapted their formation to defend against that angle, the humans would attack from the same direction again. They would set traps that seemed obvious, which the Devourers would avoid, only to discover that avoiding the trap was the actual trap. They used psychological warfare against an enemy that supposedly had no psychology. They played loud music during attacks. They painted threats on walls. They left behind damaged equipment that the Devourers would try to study, only to have it explode. Dr. Elena Volkov, the sergeant's sister and a xenobiologist embedded with the troops, watched the Devourer behavior patterns carefully. She noticed something that the council scientists had missed. The Devourers were making mistakes. Small ones, barely noticeable, but mistakes nonetheless. "They are learning from us," she told Admiral Chun in a secure transmission. "But they are learning the wrong things. Human tactics are so chaotic that their adaptive algorithms are creating errors. Every time we do something illogical, it corrupts their prediction models a little bit more." Chun understood immediately. "So we are not just fighting them. We are breaking their ability to fight." "Exactly," Elena said. "The more unpredictable we are, the more their system breaks down. We need to weaponize our chaos." Word spread through the human forces. Be unpredictable, be random, be chaos itself. Pilots started flying patterns that made no tactical sense but somehow worked. Marines started using weapons in ways they were not designed for. Engineers started building defenses that violated every principle of military architecture but were incredibly effective. The council officers watched in horror and fascination. This was not warfare as they understood it. This was madness given form and purpose. But it was working. The Battle of Kadasha Prime lasted 6 days. In the end, the planet was saved. 40% of the human fleet was destroyed. Over 10,000 human soldiers died. The council lost fewer ships and fewer soldiers because they fought more carefully. But it was the humans who broke the Devourer attack. As the surviving ships limped back to the staging area, Caltho sat in silence on the bridge next to Captain Okonkwo. His blue skin was darker now, covered in soot and dried blood from a wound on his arm. He had never seen real combat before. His species had not fought a real war in generations. "Why do you do it?" he asked Sarah quietly. "Why do you sacrifice so much?" Sarah looked at the stars through the viewport. Somewhere out there, her home planet waited. Somewhere out there, her family hoped she would return. "Because someone has to," she said simply. "Because if not us, then who? We learned a long time ago that freedom and survival have a price. We learned that sometimes you have to pay in blood. It is not fair. It is not right. But it is real. Kalthos thought about this for a long time. Finally, he said something in his own language, then translated it. Your species has a phrase. Worth it. I think I understand now what it means. Sarah nodded. Welcome to the human race, Kalthos. Not the species. The race against extinction. We have been running it since we climbed down from the trees. And we have gotten very, very good at it. 6 months had passed since Kadasha Prime. Admiral Marcus Chun stood in his private quarters, staring at a wall covered in photographs. Each face belonged to a human soldier who had died under his command. There were hundreds of them now. Soon there would be thousands. He had started memorizing their names, but there were too many. That failure haunted him more than anything else. The war was turning. Human tactics had won 17 major battles. The Devourers were being pushed back. The Council species were calling humans heroes and saviors. But Chun saw the truth in every casualty report. They were winning by bleeding. A message arrived from Earth. His daughter had sent a video. She was 12 years old, and she wanted to know when Daddy was coming home. Chun watched it 3 times, then deleted it. He could not afford to think about home. Not yet. Maybe not ever. A knock on the door pulled him from his thoughts. Valshara entered without waiting for permission. The Therian leader looked tired, her blue skin duller than before. The Council is debating your species again, she said quietly. Half of them think you are our salvation. The other half thinks you will be worse than the Devourers once this war ends. What do you think? Chun asked. Valshara sat down heavily. I think you terrify me. I think your capacity for violence is beyond anything we have known. But I also think you are the only reason my species still exists. So I do not know what to think anymore. Chun poured her a drink from a bottle of whiskey someone had smuggled onto the ship. She had developed a taste for human alcohol over the past months. It was one of many human things the Council species were learning. We have a problem, Valshara said after taking a sip. The Devourers have built something in the Shattered Belt. Our scouts call it a mega foundry. If it becomes operational, it will produce enough new Devourer units to overwhelm us within weeks. Chun pulled up the tactical display. The Shattered Belt was an asteroid field surrounding a neutron star. Dense, dangerous, and perfect for hiding a massive structure. What is the Council's plan? He asked. Frontal assault. 3 full battle groups. The mathematicians calculate we will lose 60% of our forces, but we will destroy the foundry. Valshara's voice was hollow. Acceptable losses, they say. Chun studied the data. 60% losses meant over 100,000 deaths. Most of them would be humans because humans flew the most dangerous missions. His people had become the Council's expendable shock troops. The thing they had feared was coming true. They were being used, but what choice did they have? If the foundry went operational, everyone died. There is another way, Chun said slowly. A small force. Infiltration instead of assault. We captured a Devourer scout ship last month. We could use it to get inside. Valshara shook her head. The success probability is less than 3%. It would be a suicide mission. But if it worked, we would save 100,000 lives, Chun said. I can get volunteers. He was right. When Chun called for volunteers, over 10,000 people stepped forward. Humans, Therians, even the heavily armored Krennic warriors. Warriors from across the galaxy who had learned to trust each other in the fire of combat. Chun chose 50. The best of the best. Soldiers who had survived impossible situations. Engineers who could improvise solutions from nothing. Scientists who understood Devourer technology. He called it Operation Rubicon, named after an ancient Earth river that a general crossed while declaring there was no turning back. Lieutenant James Ruiz led the ground team. He was 28 years old, born in Mexico City, and he had survived 7 major battles. His specialty was combat engineering, building things and blowing them up. The soldiers called him Lucky Jim because he always came back alive. Ruiz hated the nickname. He did not believe in luck, only in preparation and skill. Kalthos volunteered immediately. Over the past 6 months, the young Therian had become almost human in his thinking. He understood concepts his people had forgotten: honor through sacrifice, victory through audacity, and the bond between warriors who trust each other with their lives. The other Therians called him broken. Humans called him brother. The captured Devourer ship was a grotesque thing, all organic surfaces and biomechanical interfaces. It smelled like death and oil. The human engineers had studied it for weeks, learning how to control it. Flying it was like piloting a living creature that hated you. Sarah Okonkwo flew the ship. She had been promoted to wing commander, but she volunteered to fly this mission personally. Chung tried to refuse, but she reminded him that she was the best pilot in the fleet. He could not argue with that. The journey to the Shattered Belt took 3 days. The team spent the time preparing equipment and going over the plan. The mission was simple in theory. Land inside the foundry. Place explosive charges in critical locations. Detonate the charges. And trigger a chain reaction in the neutron star's accretion disk. In practice, 1,000 things could go wrong. What happens if we cannot detonate the charges remotely? Asked one of the younger soldiers. Ruiz looked at him steadily. Then someone stays behind and does it manually. The young soldier went pale. Everyone understood what that meant. They reached the Shatter Belt on schedule. The foundry was massive, a structure kilometers long that looked like a cancer growing on the face of reality. Organic towers stretched into space, pulsing with sick light. Devourer ships crawled across its surface like insects. Sarah flew the captured ship toward the main entrance. Devourer identification codes scrolled across the screens, codes that the human intelligence teams had stolen and decoded. For a terrible moment, nothing happened. Then the foundry doors opened like a mouth swallowing prey. They were inside. The interior was a nightmare. Organic corridors stretched in every direction, lit by bioluminescent growths. The walls pulsed as if breathing. Everywhere, Devourer units moved with purpose, building and processing and converting matter into more of themselves. The team split into groups, each heading to a critical location. They moved in silence, using hand signals because even encrypted radio might be detected. Ruiz led his group to the foundry's main reactor, a massive structure that looked like a beating heart, made of metal and flesh. They had just finished placing the charges when alarms screamed through the foundry. Somehow, they had been detected. Devourers poured into the corridors from every direction. The team fought their way back toward the ship, leaving mines and traps behind them. 3 people died in the first minute. 5 more in the second. The careful plan dissolved into chaos and desperation. They reached the ship, but the foundry's defenses had adapted. The doors were sealed. The escape route was blocked. Sarah tried every trick she knew, but the Devourers had locked them in. Ruiz looked at the detonator in his hand. The charges were set. All he needed to do was press the button. But if he did it now, they would all die. He looked at Kalthos. The Therian understood immediately. "No," Kalthos said. "We find another way." "There is no other way," Ruiz said. "Get everyone back to the ship. Get as far as you can. Maybe you will make it out before the explosion." "Then I stay with you," Kalthos said. It was not a request. Ruiz wanted to argue, but there was no time. The Devourers were breaking through the barricades. He nodded once. "It has been an honor, brother." "The honor is mine," Kalthos replied. The others ran for the ship. Sarah screamed at them through the radio to move. Now, immediately. The ship lifted off, shields at maximum, engines straining. Behind them, Ruiz and Kelthos held the doorway. They fought side by side, human and alien, covering each other's blind spots the way they had done in a dozen battles. When Ruiz's rifle ran empty, Kelthos stepped forward. When Kelthos fell wounded, Ruiz dragged him back and kept firing. Finally, when there were too many devourers and no more ammunition, Ruiz armed the detonator. He looked at Kelthos one last time. "Tell them we did not go quietly," Ruiz said. "They will know," Kelthos promised. "The whole galaxy will know." Ruiz pressed the button. The explosion tore through the foundry like the hand of an angry god. The chain reaction reached the neutron star's disk exactly as Dr. Elena Volkov had calculated. The blast wave expanded in a sphere of pure destruction, consuming the foundry and everything in it. Sarah's ship barely escaped. The blast caught them at the edge of the belt, throwing the vessel like a toy. Half the systems failed. They limped back to the fleet on emergency power, carrying 23 survivors of the 50 who had gone in. Admiral Chun watched the recordings from their cameras. He watched Ruiz and Kelthos make their last stand. He watched them face death with courage and brotherhood. Then he sat down and added 2 more photographs to his wall. That night, he recorded a message to Earth. His hand shook as he spoke. "We are winning this war. The enemy is in retreat. The galaxy is being saved. But I do not know what price we are paying. I do not know if we will recognize ourselves when this is over. War does not make legends. It makes ghosts who wear the faces of legends. And I am becoming one of those ghosts." He sent the message, then sat in the darkness of his quarters for a long time, surrounded by the faces of the dead. 1 year after humanity joined the war, the galaxy stood on the edge of victory or annihilation. The Devourers had retreated to their final stronghold, a superstructure built around a dying star at the galaxy's rim. It was larger than any planet, a monument to their terrible purpose. Every council species agreed this was where the war would end. The council assembled the largest fleet in galactic history, 10,000 ships from 17 species. Half of them were human vessels, crude but effective, crewed by warriors who had learned to fight without fear. Admiral Marcus Chun commanded this armada from his flagship, the Indomitable, which had survived every major battle of the war. Chun was 54 now, but he looked 70. War had aged him in ways that time could not measure. His hair had gone completely gray. His eyes held shadows that would never leave. The council leadership gathered for a final strategic meeting. Valshara stood at the center, but she was not alone. Beside her stood representatives from every species, and for the first time, they stood as equals. The war had changed the council. Humans had changed it. "We have developed a weapon," Valshara announced. The chamber fell silent. It is called a dimensional warhead. It will collapse the star system into a singularity. The Devourers will be erased from existence in an instant. Admiral Chun felt cold dread in his stomach. "What else will be erased?" he asked quietly. Valshara's face was carefully neutral. "The Devourers have conquered 17 worlds. They have not yet consumed them. Billions of civilians still live on those worlds, trapped behind enemy lines. The weapon will destroy them too." The chamber erupted. Some species argued it was necessary. Others protested it was murder. Chun simply stood and walked out. He had heard enough. In the fleet's command center, he called a meeting of his top officers. Sarah Okonkwo was there, now an admiral herself. Dr. Elena Volkov attended via video link from the science vessel. Dozens of other officers, human and alien, filled the room. "They are going to use a weapon that will kill billions of innocent people," Chun said without preamble. "I am refusing the order. Anyone who wishes to follow council command instead should leave now. I will not hold it against you." No one moved. "Very well," Chun said. Then we are going to do something stupid. We are going to save those people. What followed was the most audacious plan ever conceived. While the main fleet attacked the Devourer superstructure, strike teams would assault all 17 occupied worlds simultaneously. They would establish beachheads, evacuate civilians, and hold the line long enough for Council ships to extract everyone. It was tactically insane. It meant splitting forces against a superior enemy. Every military principle said it would fail. But humans had never followed military principles anyway. The Council leadership ordered Chun to stand down. He refused. They threatened court-martial. He ignored them. Finally, half the Council fleet broke away to join him. Species who had learned to trust humans more than their own leaders. Warriors who had fought beside humans and learned what it meant to refuse surrender. The galaxy held its breath. The final battle began at dawn, though there was no real dawn in the darkness of space. The main fleet, now split in two, engaged the Devourer superstructure. The fighting was brutal and immediate. The Devourers had adapted to every tactic the Council had used, but they had never seen an entire galaxy fight with human determination. On the 17 occupied worlds, human dropships fell like meteors. Marines hit the ground running, establishing defensive perimeters around civilian shelters. They fought in cities and forests and deserts, each battlefield unique, each one desperate. On the fourth planet, Sergeant Maria Santos led a platoon through the ruins of what had once been a beautiful city. The Devourers had built conversion centers here, processing civilians slowly. Santos and her soldiers fought room to room, clearing buildings and rescuing people who had given up hope. "Keep moving," Santos shouted as plasma fire rained around them. "Get these people to the extraction point." A massive Devourer warrior blocked their path. It was 3 meters tall, covered in organic armor, armed with weapons grown from its own body. Santos's squad opened fire, but the creature adapted, its armor shifting to deflect their bullets. Then Santos did something the Devourers did not expect. She dropped her rifle and charged with a combat knife. The warrior tried to track her, but she was too close, too fast. She drove the knife into a gap in its armor and detonated a grenade she had taped to her chest. The explosion killed the Devourer and knocked Santos back 10 meters. Her armor was cracked, her body broken, but the path was clear. Her squad got the civilians out. She died knowing they had made it. In orbit above the superstructure, Admiral Chun led the fleet in a direct assault. This was not careful strategic warfare. This was a brawl, a desperate push to breach the structure's core. Human ships flew into the teeth of Devourer defenses, sacrificing themselves to create openings for others. Chun's flagship took hit after hit, but the Indomitable lived up to its name. They punched through the outer defenses and drove toward the heart of the structure. Behind them, a trail of burning ships marked their path, but the Council's rogue faction had not abandoned their weapon. 3 ships broke from formation and accelerated toward the star. They carried the dimensional warhead. They would end the war their way, regardless of cost. Dr. Elena Volkov saw them coming. She had spent 6 months studying captured Devourer technology, learning secrets the Council scientists had missed. She had developed a countermeasure, a device that could redirect dimensional energy. It was theoretical, untested, and probably would not work. But she had to try. "Activate the field," she ordered her engineering team. They were terrified, but they trusted her. They had seen what humans could do when they refused to give up. The device powered up. Reality bent. For a horrible moment, Elena thought they had failed. Then the dimensional warhead detonated, and space itself screamed. But instead of expanding outward, the collapse turned inward. The superstructure began to fold into itself, pulled into a singularity that consumed only the Devourers. The occupied worlds, outside the field's effect, remained intact. Chun's ship was caught at the edge of the collapse. Gravity pulled at them with impossible force. The structure around them began to disintegrate. They were dying, but they were winning. "All ships, full retreat," Chun ordered. "Get those evacuation transports out of here." Sarah Okonkwo, commanding the rescue fleet, watched in horror as the Indomitable began to break apart. "Admiral, you need to evacuate now." "Negative," Chun replied calmly. "We need to buy more time. Tell my daughter I'm sorry. Tell her Daddy is proud of her." But the universe was not done surprising people. The dimensional field stabilized. The collapse stopped at the superstructure's boundary. Chun's ship, battered and broken, drifted free of the gravity woe. Against all odds, they had survived. The war ended not with a bang but with silence. The Devourers were gone. The occupied worlds were free. The galaxy was saved. The cost was staggering. 30% of humanity's population, military and civilian, was dead. Earth cities were filled with memorials. Every nation mourned. But humanity had saved not just themselves, but 17 other species who had been written off as acceptable losses. In the aftermath, the Council offered humanity full membership. The ceremony was held in the rebuilt Council Chamber, now redesigned to include human-sized seats. Valshara herself presented the offer. Admiral Chun, aged and scarred but still standing, accepted on behalf of Earth. But his words surprised everyone. "We will join you," he said, "but not as subordinates or as saviors. As equals, as partners. The galaxy is stronger when we fight for what is right, not just what is logical. The galaxy is stronger when we value every life, not just the ones that are convenient to save." He paused, looking at the representatives from species human and alien alike. "This war taught us many things. It taught us that we can work together. It taught us that courage exists in every species. It taught us that survival is not enough. We must be worthy of survival. We must build something worth the price we paid for it." A monument was erected at the coordinates of the final battle. It was a simple obelisk made from metal donated by every species. Inscribed on it, in every language of the galaxy, were these words: "Here the galaxy learned that legends are not born from victory alone, but from the refusal to sacrifice our souls for survival. Here humanity taught the stars to hope." Years passed. The war became history, then legend. Young people across the galaxy grew up learning about the Devourer War and the humans who changed everything. They learned tactics and strategies. They learned about heroism and sacrifice. But more importantly, they learned why humans did what they did. Admiral Chun retired to a small house in Colorado, on Earth, where mountains touched the sky. He spent his days writing letters to the families of soldiers who had died under his command. He would never finish. There were too many. His daughter, now a young woman, visited him often. She had joined the new Galactic Defense Force, following in his footsteps. He had tried to talk her out of it, but she was too much like him. One evening, as they sat watching the sunset, she asked him the question everyone asked eventually: was it worth it? Chun looked at the sky, where human ships and alien vessels flew together in peace. He thought about all the people who had died. He thought about all the people who had been saved. He thought about Ruiz and Kalthos and Santos and thousands of others whose names were carved on monuments across the galaxy. "I do not know," he said honestly. "I won every battle, but I lost so many people. I saved the galaxy, but I could not save them. Was that worth it? Ask me again when I meet them in whatever comes after this. Maybe they will tell me." His daughter took his hand. "They already have, Dad. Every person living in those 17 worlds. Every child born in peace. Every species that learned to hope again. They are all saying thank you. They are all saying it was worth it." Chun squeezed her hand and said nothing. But for the first time in years, he allowed himself to believe it might be true. The sun set. The stars came out. And somewhere among them, humanity's story continued, no longer as a legend of war, but as a promise that when darkness comes, someone will stand and fight. That when hope seems lost, someone will refuse to surrender. That when the galaxy needs heroes, humanity will answer, not because they were perfect, not because they were invincible, but because they were human. And that was enough.